In the shadow of Giza's pyramids, there lie the tombs of the people responsible for building these logic-defying structures. There lay the tombs of the architects, the military men, the priests, and the high-ranking administrators who led ancient Egypt. These people were the ones who ensured that Egypt's finances were healthy enough to construct these monumental structures that would eventually outlast eternity. So how did they do it? The short answer: a perfect economy. The ancient Egyptian economy was a work of perfection that led to the emergence of one of the ancient world's greatest civilizations. It was established to integrate all the natural elements they had at hand at the discretion of planned bureaucracy that moderated and sustained every detail to absolute perfection. And in this video, we'll be dissecting how ancient Egypt stayed self-sufficient and survived the test of time. Ancient Egyptian economy. Interestingly, the economy of ancient Egypt has its own name, called the ancient command economy. Ancient Egypt essentially achieved economic perfection with its specialized bureaucracy that moderated or sustained every detail, which is an essential characteristic of successful and planned economies. Ancient Egypt was primarily self-sufficient because householders often held many goods for the future or exchanged by barter on the market, which played a crucial role in keeping the economy alive. Interestingly, trade has always been a critical aspect of any civilization over history. No matter how many goods one has, there will always be something one lacks and will need to purchase through trading with another. This is the main reason why trading is an ancient yet alive concept. Ancient Egypt and its population were rich in many natural resources and had to rely on trade for necessary goods and luxuries. Taking its start in the pre-dynastic period, 6000 BC to 3150 BC, Egypt's economy adopted the barter system without cash. However, it was not until the Persian invasion around 500 BC that the country's government ultimately instituted a cash economy. Precedently, trade flourished through exchanging goods and services based on a traditional value both parties considered honorable. According to notable historians like James C. Thompson, goods and services were valued on a unit known as deben. What makes this more interesting is that deben initially functioned like our fiat currencies. However, there was no deben coin. The value of deben was approximately 90 grams of copper. Additionally, costly items were valued in debens of silver or gold. How trade worked essentially was that if a pair of shoes would cost 1 deben and an ancient scroll cost 1 deben, then the pair of shoes could be traded fairly for the ancient scroll. Similarly, if 2 jugs of beer cost a deben and a day of laborious work was worth a deben, then a labor worker could fairly be paid with 2 jugs of beer. Enjoying this video so far? Remember to hit that like and subscribe button. Okay, let's get back to the video. The history of trading in ancient Egypt. Trade took its origin between Upper and Lower Egypt and between fragmented districts of those regions before unification. However, by the first dynasty of Egypt, trade was already long introduced with Mesopotamia. Thanks to the first dynasty kings' success-oriented mindsets, ancient Egypt had established a strong central government at their capital of Memphis with a bureaucracy that ultimately became their most vital feature. Ancient Egypt had initiated international trade with regions such as Levant, Libya, and Nubia by the First Dynasty. Moreover, Egypt had also established trading colonies in Canaan, Syria, and Nubia. The Egyptians often sent ships of wood to Lebanon for cedar. For the overland trade, Egyptian traders would utilize the trade route through Wadi Hammamat, wound from the Nile to the Red Sea. Interestingly, much of Egypt's trade agreements were achieved through peaceful negotiations. However, some were made through military campaigns. While the dynasty had its fair share of contributing to the economy, it was not until the New Kingdom period when the ancient Egypt economy experienced its most lucrative years. Trade during the New Kingdom contributed to the wealth required to build mind-defying structures, like the Temple of Karnak, the Colossi of Memnon, and the mortuary temple of Hatshepsut. However, we shouldn't forget the Old Kingdom's initial trade that funded building the pyramids of Giza and innumerable other monuments. So what powered the ancient Egyptian economy? Much of ancient Egyptian wealth came from farming and fishing, manufacture, mining, commerce and banking, warfare, slavery, and taxation. According to sources, agriculture generated most of ancient Egypt's wealth. Grain, vegetables, fruit, cattle, goats, pigs, fowl, and fish from the Nile were some of the most vital sources. Interestingly, what ancient Egypt did was tax everything before it was sold or traded in the market. Since ancient Egypt's soil remained fertile, producers were able to restock reasonably quickly. What's interesting is that ancient Egypt controlled a vast majority of the fish consumed in that era. With control over the Nile, ancient Egypt provided almost all the fish consumed by people in that area. No wonder they were able to fund pyramids stacked 481 foot high. It must have been some delicious fish. A proportion of ancient Egyptian wealth was also generated by mining. The wealthy minority of the ancient Egyptian community invested a great deal of time and resources into mining precious metals and gems. At the time, ancient Egypt lacked wood, metal, and precious stones needed for amulets, jewelry, and other ornaments. Therefore, gold was mined by slaves in Nubia. Quick fact, Nubia got its name from the Egyptian word for gold, called nub. History suggests that the primary energy source in ancient Egypt was none other than manpower and domestic animals such as donkeys and cows. Interestingly, domestic animals played a crucial role in transport and agriculture. While horses existed in ancient Egypt, much of them were exclusive to the royals, so they never really held economic importance. Moreover, Egypt's hot weather also served as a primary source of energy in ancient Egypt. Producers would often use the heat of the sun to produce mud bricks. Additionally, ancient Egyptians would use fire for cooking, baking, smelting, casting metal, glass making, and pottery. The Egyptians used charcoal instead of coal and wood to make their fires. One great source of wealth in ancient Egypt was warfare. Ancient Egypt often expedited neighboring regions and eventually brought back boatloads of riches and produce. The Hatshepsut often organized the best-known trade expeditions in ancient Egypt's history. Enjoying this video so far? Remember to hit that subscribe button. Okay, let's get back to the video. So, how did ancient Egypt achieve its command economy? Well, ancient Egypt was able to achieve perfection because of its religion. Initially, a vast majority of Egyptians lived on the land in self-sufficient village communities, and most of them adhered to the belief that the land they worked on belonged to the gods, Osiris, Horus, and their earthly incarnation, the pharaoh. This meant that the king essentially owned everything, from the land to whatever was produced. The people believed that the king was appointed by the gods as a mediator between the gods and the people, allowing him to be recognized as the land's legitimate administrator. Moreover, whatever was produced on the farms around the Nile was believed to be the king's property and was sent to him. Interestingly, the capital often sent part of the produce to the people through distribution centers to manufacture secondary products such as linen, bread, beer, and basketry. The government then used the remaining products for trade to generate government income. This income was often distributed as payment to state employees, hence funding the court and its projects. The king often practiced his responsibility of caring for the people, the land, and maintaining harmony. The abundance of food would continually evaluate a king's success. If there were a lack of food, The priests would reevaluate their steps to determine their strengths and weaknesses and calculated whatever steps were needed to regain the gods' goodwill. Who were the beneficiaries of ancient Egypt's economy? Interestingly, it was the Commonwealth. Many historians considered ancient Egypt as the most heavily taxed nation in ancient history. Despite the weight of the levies imposed on the masses, the society existed peacefully and unchanged for over 2,000 years. Coherently, a significant part of the tax imposed on the people was used to stabilize the society. The bureaucratic administration dictated order throughout the country for most of its history. Almost 3,000 years of development attributes its success to policies set by the bureaucrats. The following guidelines were practiced. Grain was stocked and distributed in times of famine. Unpaid laborers were fed from grain stores when work was impossible. Offerings at the temples were used to feed the poor. The royal treasury paid workers to construct public buildings. While famines affected the poor more than the rich, there wasn't much difference between the demographics based on health when times were normal. The government greatly cared for the poor, which immensely helped ancient Egypt's economy stand out in contrast to other ancient civilizations. Ancient Egypt's economy benefited different classes of people in different ways, a characteristic that helped ancient Egypt stand the tides of time. In conclusion, the ancient Egyptian economy had laid the groundwork for the modern economy. The ancient economy was undoubtedly a work of perfection that was all possible due to its abundance of natural resources and its government. We learned that its bureaucracy played a significant role in sustaining the ancient Egyptian civilization. We also learned that the ancient Egyptian economy heavily relied on trade. Their most lucrative sector was agriculture, farming, mining, and warfare. Moreover, we learned that the fundamental religion and unity of people accepting the king as the rightful owner of the lands helped pave the system. Subsequently, the king also actively practiced his responsibility of caring for the people and maintaining the system. All of these characteristics are attributed to the success of the economy of an empire nation. Many factors helped the ancient Egyptian economy persevere to the test of time. So, until next time, see you in the next video.